you don't win at things that you're not better at the person at usually.
Right. Yeah. You're right. That's life. I mean, I at work, I mean, I've been managing people for a long time, and I run manufacturing plants, and so there's a lot of numbers involved as far as how you're performing on a daily basis, blah, blah, blah. And I tell them, because most of them can relate to sports like I do. I said, look, we're putting these systems in place to measure your performance because I want to know if we're winning or losing. I said, it's about, if there's no scoreboard, how do you know if you're winning? How do you know how you're doing? And if we want to be competitive in the marketplace, then we need to be able to keep score. And we need to be able to say, okay, this is how we're performing today by the numbers, by the score. And then if we want to be competitive in the future, and people relate to that. I tell them, it's like, yeah, you walk
cut out
into
just a second.
That's okay. That's all right.
You said if we want to be competitive in the future, to measure that success.
And and how do I know if I'm getting better? And I'm getting better. It's just like you were saying. You play somebody that's better than you, and eventually you beat them. Well, you just showed that you got better, unless that person just got worse, which is always possible. But it's still you got better relative to that person. And that's I tell people, look, when you walk into a football stadium, what's the first thing you do? You look at the scoreboard.
Yep.
Just that's keeping
it's
score.
Human nature. Yeah.
It's human. It really is. And it doesn't mean you don't cooperate, because you cooperate as a team member. But you know how it is if you're on a basketball team. When you're practicing, you're trying to get better. You hope the team gets better, but you're also competing against that other point guard.
Right.
As for who's going to start. So you want to compete, but you got to cooperate too. So it's a tough thing.
So you're a manager of. You've been manager of manufacturing plants and stuff. When you see other managers and other higher ups in big organizations, do they tend to have that competitiveness in them, or is it kind of not? They
do. Most of them do. It's a little more hard. It's a little harder to discern. It's easier to see it on in a sporting event, but most of them are pretty competitive. Especially the higher up they go, there are a lot of people that operate at a high level in an organization. At some point, the money becomes less important. It's more about, my organization is now more successful because I'm leader of that organization or whatever. I'm not saying money isn't important.
Right.
It is. And then people like to be, compensated for being good at what they do. But I think that so much of it is that the money is a way of showing that you're better than somebody else. If that's a good. It's not just for what it can buy you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I've talked and watched other people. I do my own projects. I try to make money on my own without a boss. Haven't done it successfully, where it completely supplements my life. But over the last 3 years, I've really gone all in on trying to create ways to make money on my own. And I've noticed as I do this, I noticed that other people in my same shoes, whether they're successful or trying to be successful at it, they tend to be fairly competitive.
Sure.
It's more that, there is a huge amount of challenge that goes into, I'm going to make money on my own without a boss, without, and that is, I've heard over when I was trying, I've heard a lot like, oh, that's hard. That's almost impossible. And I'm like, where most people would run, I'm like, ooh, competition. I'm like, almost impossible. Did you say almost impossible? Yes. All right, let's do it. So, I spend 3 years of my life and basically all of my savings to try to do this just to see if I can prove to myself that I can do something extremely hard. And for me, competition in the business and workplace, I'm all about that. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks, he wrote this book about like the competition of business, or I don't know the exact name, but that's one of the few books I've read since college. And it was really good. And it kind of really, I've probably read that 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And that's one of the ones that kind of pushed me to wanting to be my own manager and own and stuff. And so I was like, oh, it can be done. It takes a whole lot of work. It's really competitive. It's not easy. I'm like, sign me up. I'll lose money for 10 years just in hopes of trying to be able to say that I did it.
I did
for myself.
No, absolutely. A couple of years ago when Karen and I bought a franchise, we bought it, and part of it, you hear all the horror stories. Oh, 7 out of 10 small businesses fail within the first couple of years, and and all that. Same thing you're talking about. It's a
I heard a lot of doom and gloom stories.
And gloom stories. So it's like, okay, I get it. And it's, you don't want to be foolish about things, but at the same time, it's like you said it. It's almost impossible. Okay,
let's see what we can do. Roll up our sleeves. See what we
can do. Yeah, exactly. So, how many times you hear sports stories about, the big underdog that knocked off, you're too young to remember. Chaminade out of Hawaii, played University of Virginia when they had Ralph Sampson, who was 7'4" or whatever it is. They were ranked number 1, and Chaminade was a Division II school, a Division II or a small Division.
Wow.
They knocked them off. They beat it. It's like been considered one of the biggest upsets of all time in college basketball.
Crazy.
And they figured out. It's like, can you beat them? Probably not. And if they played them 99 more times, they wouldn't have won. But they beat them that one time.
That's why you lace them up.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love the competition in business, and I had a lot of doom and gloom stories, and you read them like, oh, you shouldn't try this, and you're probably going to lose. So for me, I took the reasonable approach. As you said, you don't want to be foolish and just like go into debt and take on credit cards that you can't pay, whatever. Like, you don't want to ruin your life trying to do it. But for me personally, I was like, okay, I saved up. I was really good at saving money, and I invested it well. And so I built up a nice amount of capital that, to some people, if I were to say, are you okay with losing $50,000 trying to do your own thing? I'd be like, no.
No.
But for me, I'm like, well, I might lose all of this, and it might not pay off at all. And I might spend hundreds or thousands of hours doing this, and it might not pay off at all. I might lose it all. But for me, I was okay with it, just because, again, like, I'd rather die doing this and losing than be winning 12-0, working at a company and being bored my whole life.
Right. Exactly.
It's just who I am.